Merry Christmas, everyone! We hope you enjoy this rendition of How the Hex Stole Christmas. Special thanks, of course, to everyone who helped make this possible. Names on the screen. Every nerd down in Nerdville liked Christmas a lot, but the Hex who lived just north of Nerdville did not. The Hex hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now please, don't ask why, no one quite knows the reason. It could be that his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be, perhaps, that his words caused fright. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. Whatever the reason, his heart or his words, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the nerds. Staring down from his cave with a sour hexy frown at the warm lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every nerd down in Nerdville beneath was busy now, hanging a mistletoe wreath.
And they're hanging their stockings,
he snarled with a sneer.
Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here.
Then he growled with his hex fingers nervously drumming.
I must find a way to stop Christmas from coming.
For tomorrow he knew all the nerd girls and boys would wake bright and early, they'd rush for their toys. And then, oh the noise, 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 noise. That's the one thing he hated, the noise. Noise, noise, noise. Then the nerds young and old would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast and they'd feast and they'd feast, feast, feast. They would feast on nerd pudding and rare nerd roast beef, which was something the Hex couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every nerd down in Nerdville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand and the nerds would start memeing. And they'd meme and they'd meme and they'd meme. Meme, meme, meme. And the more the Hex thought of this nerd Christmas ting, the more the Hex thought,
I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 2 solid years I put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming, but how?
Then he got an idea, an awful idea. The Hex got a wonderful, awful idea.
I know just what to do!
The Hex laughed in his throat, and he made a quick nerd man tie in a coat, and he chuckled and clucked.
What a great hexy trick! With this coat and this tie, I look just like that prick! Now all I need is a milk dog.
The Hex looked around, but since milk dogs are scarce, there were none to be found. Did that stop the old Hex? No! The Hex simply said,
If I can't find a milk dog, I'll make one instead!
So he called his dog Hax, and he took some red thread, and he put a big hat on top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Hax. Then the Hex said,
Get up!
And the sleigh started down, towards the homes where the nerds lay a snooze in their town. All the windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. All the nerds were all dreaming sweet dreams without care, when he came to the first little house on the square.
This stop is number 1,
the old Hexy man hissed, and he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney as he stifled his kex. If the nerd man could do it, then so could the Hex. He got stuck only once for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little nerd stockings all hung in a row.
These stockings,
he grinned,
are the first thing to go.
Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present. Hats and frying pans, John Cena and memes, RNG, more pans, good artwork and streams. And he stuffed them in bags. Then the Hex, very nimbly, stuffed all the bags, one by one, straight up the chimney. Then he slunk to the icebox, he took the nerd's feast, he took the nerd pudding, he took the roast beef. He cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Hex even took the last bag of nerd hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee.
And now,
grinned the Hex,
I'll stuff up the tree.
And the Hex grabbed the tree and he started to shove, when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and saw a small nerdagoo, little Miss Shelley, who was no older than 22. The Hex had been caught by this tiny nerd lady who had got out of bed for a cup of cold gravy. She stared at the Hex and said,
Nerdman, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why?
But you know, that old Hex was so smart and so slick. He thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick.
Why, my sweet little sub?
The fake Nerdman lied.
There's a light on this tree that won't light on one side, so I'm taking it to my home, to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there and I'll bring it back here.
And his fib fooled the child, then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Miss Shelley went up to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log for their fire. He went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On the walls he left nothing but mean comments, quite dire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other nerds' houses, leaving crumbs much too small for other nerds' mouses. It was dawn, all the nerds still abed, all the nerds still a snooze, when he packed up his sled. Packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags, the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Trumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it.
Wrecked to the nerds.
He was hexishly humming.
They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two, and the nerds down in Nerdville will all cry boo-boo-hoo. That's a noise,
Grinned the Hex.
that I simply must hear.
So he paused, and the Hex put his hand to his ear, and he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow, but the sound wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry, very. He stared down at Nerdville, the Hex popped his eyes, then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every nerd down in Nerdville, the tall and the small, was memeing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming, it came. Somehow or another, it came just the same. And the Hex, with his Hex feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so?
It came without panniers, it came without means, it came without orange Jesus John Cena or streams.
And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Hex thought of something he hadn't before.
Maybe Christmas,
He thought.
does it come from a sight? Maybe Christmas, perhaps, mean it's always alright?
And what happened then? Well, in Nerdville they say that the Hex's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light, and he brought back the pans and the refrozen ice cream, and he himself, the Hex, hosted a nerd stream. Merry Christmas, everyone. We'll see you all next time.
Oh, hello. I'm ready when you guys are. Guys? Oh, they've finished, haven't they? Oh, Alright, that is it. I'm so done with Christmas.